The Slayer of Lies and the Crow's Eye, Daenerys Targaryen versus Euron Greyjoy, Azor Ahai versus the Great Other. In my previous theory, I mentioned that the real second Dance of the Dragons would happen between Daenerys and Euron instead of Daenerys and young Griff, but that was a bit of a lie because it isn't the second dance, it is the third. To go forward, we must go back, so let's go back to the Great Empire of the Dawn. When the daughter of the Opal Emperor was supposed to ascend to power as the Amethyst Empress, her envious brother cast her down and proclaimed himself the Bloodstone Emperor. When he became the Bloodstone Emperor, he began a reign of terror and slavery. He practiced dark arts, necromancy, took a tiger woman for his bride, feasted on human flesh, and cast on the gods Vet to worship a black stone fallen from the sky. This blood betrayal ushered in the long night, with the maiden made of light turning her back on the world, while the lion of night came forth to punish the wickedness of man. To me, this is essentially the first dance because I believe during this time period they either had dragons or had more draconic features, but they were certainly sorcerers of some kind. The second dance is the Dance of the Dragons when Aegon II usurps his sister Rhaenyra. When she was killed by him, that was another blood betrayal. Once she died, the dragons began to die out, and the winters got longer and harsher, ushering in the long night that is about to happen in the current story. Now, to go back, I know people will say, why bring up something from the World of Ice and Fire book? It's not even something brought up in the mainline series. And to that I say, why do you hate creativity in theories? But also, you're wrong, they are brought up. Ghosts lined the hallway, dressed in the faded raiment of kings. In their hands were swords of pale fire, their hair of silver and hair of gold and hair of platinum white, and their eyes were opal and amethyst, tourmaline and jade. In the Game of Thrones, this is the Daenerys chapter. Why is George showing us these people in Dany's dragon dream so early in the story? George loves his foreshadowing more than anything. Now, back to Daenerys versus Euron. There are some other references to Dany having connections to the Amethyst Empress and Euron the Bloodstone Emperor. Euron specifically tells Victorion that Dany has eyes the color of amethyst. Her hair is silver gold and her eyes are amethyst in A Feast for Crows. And Daenerys in Daenerys' name is Welsh for Lord, noblewoman. It also means hero, harkening back to the Maiden Made of Light, turning her back on the world, ushering in the long night. And for those who think the name things are a stretch, Bran's name is Welsh for Blessed Raven. So these names are not coincidental. The current story is not trying to tell us an exact retelling of the past. It is not a one-to-one because one, parallels do not need to be a one-to-one, and George isn't trying to retell a story that's already been told. He's simply setting things up, showing us that how the past can echo how the future is an echo of the past, I should say. The order of things is already changed by the long night already being ushered in, as opposed to it being ushered in by the death of the Maiden Made of Light and the death of the Amethyst Empress. For Euron, the comparison to the Bloodstone Emperor is so easily identifiable, I sincerely doubt that George did it by coincidence. He practices dark arts, the blood sacrifice, has slaves, his tiger wife could be a woman with the pale flame beside him. Beside him stood a shadow in woman's form, long and tall and terrible, her hands alive with pale white fire. And that pale white fire is also brought up in Dany's vision of the jeweled-eyed emperors, so to me this means that it was likely a very magical time and they were sorcerers or magi's. So now you see why I'm calling it the third dance instead of the second. I believe that Euron is the Great Other, and he will be at least an avatar for the Great Other. What made me believe this is while writing this theory, a number of things stuck out to me. That night, her cooks roasted her a kid with dates and carrots, but Dany could only eat a bite of it. The prospect of wrestling Marine once more left her feeling weary. Sleep came hard even when Daario came back, so drunk that he could hardly stand. Beneath her coverlet, she tossed and turned, dreaming that his Dar was kissing her. But his lips were blue and bruised, and when he thrust himself inside her, his manhood was as cold as ice. She sat up there with her hair disheveled in a tangle. The ice in the story is mostly and exclusively used to describe the others. Will saw its eyes, blue, deeper, and bluer than any human eyes, a blue that burned like ice. His connection to the others, Euron in Dany's dragon dream, she feels the thirst of ice. Another names for the others are the Great Other, Lord of Darkness, Soul of Ice, God of Night and Terror. Another example that stuck out to me was this conversation between Davos and Melisandre when they're on their way to have Melisandre's shadow baby to kill Renly. Rest in peace, Renly. Davos, feel how cold the wind is. The guards will huddle close to the torches, a little warmth, a little light. They're a comfort on a night like this. Yet that will blind them, so that they will not see us pass. The God of darkness protects us now, my lady, even you. Speak not that name, sir, lest you draw his black eye upon us. He protects no man, I promise you. He is the enemy of all that lives. It is the torches that hide us. You have said so yourself, fire, the bright gift of the Lord of Light. It is known that Euron has one black eye that hides under his eye patch. Theon describes it as his black eye that shines with malice, which led me to look more into the Ironborn to see if there was anything else there. And their prayer that they always say sticks out to me: "What is dead may never die, but rises again, harder and stronger." I think this is a little bit of a connection to the undead in the story, but I want to clarify that I don't think the others are evil, but that's for a completely different theory that I have not written at all. So, Euron has a lot of Lovecraftian influence on his character, in particular Cthulhu. To add more evidence, let's look into some information about Cthulhu. Cthulhu is also known as a Great Old One, which makes you think of the Great Other, but let's focus on Cthulhu for right now. Great Old Ones reside in various locations on Earth and once presided over the planet as gods and rulers. It is depicted usually as a combination of a human, squid, and dragon. A monster of vaguely anthropoid outline, but with an octopus like head whose face was a mass of feelers, a scaly, rubbery looking body, prodigious claws on hind and forefeet, and long, narrow wings behind. What's more notable about Cthulhu are the abilities that he has. Castro, a Cthulhu cultist, reports that the Great Old Ones are telepathic and knew all that was occurring in the universe. They were able to communicate with the first humans by molding their dreams, thus establishing the Cthulhu cult. This makes me think of Euron potentially using a candle or some sort to telepathically communicate with Daenerys in her dreams. We also know that the Ironborn are killing so much that they see these deaths as sacrifices for the drowned god, but also everywhere they kill, hordes of people make a note the fact that krakens are spotted. Helidor Sand makes a mention of a horn that calls krakens from the Claw Isle, and a magic horn to summon krakens from the deep. Very useful such a horn would be to pull down Tyroshi and other vexing creatures. A vexing creature could very easily be a dragon. Now let's focus on the color green. The color of death is green. Drogo's paste that was put on his body is green. The green manticore that was supposed to kill Daenerys, green. Rhaegal is green, and I believe he represents opposition. I think he's the dragon that Euron is going to take. I believe the green grace is the harpy. Green is the color of wildfire, which is the opposite of life, as opposed to dragonfire, which has been seen to have the properties of rebirth. And also, the bloodstone gem is literally green, with specks of red blood in it. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature call out, "Come." I looked, and there was a pale horse. Its rider's name was Death. Now, I do believe that when Euron calls this creature, it could very well be an eat the summoner trope where he summons the thing after doing all this catastrophic damage, and then the thing that he summons just eats him. But it also could just be he is a manifestation of everything that is the opposite of what the series stands for, in that he does not value life, he does not value individuals, he does not value humanity. And I think the story is about valuing humanity and being good in spite of the terribleness that you see in the world. And we see that in many, many characters. Now, to focus on Daenerys. Daenerys, to me, is Azor Ahai, and it's a no-brainer for me, but I will go into why I believe she's Azor Ahai. As I said earlier, Daenerys in Daenerys' name means Lord Noble Hero. The Day in her name, I believe, comes from Dana. It also is a reference to Danu, the Celtic goddess, the mother goddess, but I'm going to focus on this version. Dana is considered the divinity of conscience who shows the path to the light. Dana is a goddess of conscience, goddess of truth, goddess of order, goddess of spiritual guidance in the Zoroastrianism religion, a religion George said inspired him with the religion of R'hllorism. Zoroastrianism is a never-ending battle between good and evil, between their god Ahura Mazda and an evil spirit Angur Mainyu. It is written that Dana is somehow affiliated with the reward and that the faithful will receive in the afterlife. The Vendidad portrays Dana as a goddess, guiding good and pure souls over the Chinvat Bridge to the House of Song, which is the Zoroastrian paradise, while the wicked are dragged to the House of Lies, a place of punishment. That's a very good name for our slayer of lies. In Zoroastrian theology, it is written that on the dawn of the fourth day after death, there appears then to the soul its own Dana, or religious conscience in the shape of a damsel of unsurpassed beauty, the fairest in the fair world. Is this not an extremely fitting name for the slayer of lies, Daenerys Targaryen? I think so. The prophecy for Azor Ahai. There's multiple, but I'll focus on the main two that we see. When the red star bleeds and the darkness gathers, Azor Ahai shall be reborn again amidst salt and smoke to wake dragons out of stone. In this dread hour, a warrior shall draw from the fire a burning sword, and that sword shall be Lightbringer, the red sword of heroes, and he who clasps it shall be Azor Ahai come again, and the darkness shall flee before him. Azor Ahai, beloved of R'hllor, the warrior of light, the son of fire, come forth, your sword awaits you, come forth and take it into your hand. When Daenerys emerges from the pyre naked, bald, with 3 dragons, she fulfills the first prophecy. For more details, you should check out Howled Harpy's page on TikTok. Her theory is much more in depth, and I will not spend too much time of it on here. Daenerys' Lightbringer is Drogon. Her 3 sacrifices to forge Lightbringer are Drogo, Mirri Maz Dor, and Daenerys herself. I'm specifying what the sacrifices are because it feels like people keep bringing up Rhaego as a sacrifice, and I don't think that he's a sacrifice. He was sacrificed for Drogo. When Daenerys herself walks into the pyre last, the final egg cracking, which is Drogon, is described as the breaking of the world. And the only thing that fits the description of what Lightbringer can do is a dragon. Lightbringer was able to boil the blood of a monster when Azor Ahai thrust the sword through the belly of the beast. After steam poured from the beast's mouth and its eyes melted, its body burst into flame. Now, in Daenerys chapters, this is what we get when Drogon uses his fire, and it's only Drogon who uses his fire. A lance of swirling dark flame took Kraznys full in the face, his eyes melted and ran down his cheeks. She opened her arms to the fire. She embraced it, let it swallow her whole, let it cleanse her and temper her and scour her clean. She could feel her flesh sear and blacken in a slow way, could feel her blood boil and turn to steam, and yet there was no pain. She felt strong and new and fierce. In the House of the Undying, we see many visions, but I will be focusing on Daenerys' Slayer of Lies prophecy as it pertains to Euron. A glowing red sword in the hand of a blue-eyed king that casts no shadow, that's probably Stannis. A cloth dragon swaying on poles amidst a cheering crowd, that's probably young Griff. A stone beast taking wing from tower as it breathes shadow fire. I believe this is Euron. Euron is in the Reach, and I believe after he beats the Red Wine Fleet, he's going to make his way to Old Town. And this could be possibly where he summons his monster, destroying Old Town and taking Melora Hightower as the Mad Maid with him to King's Landing. The dreams were even worse the second time. He saw long ships of the Ironborn adrift and burning on a boiling blood-red sea. He saw his brother on the Iron Throne again, but Euron was no longer human. He seemed more squid than man, a monster fathered by a kraken of the deep, with his face a mass of writhing tentacles. Beside him stood a shadow in woman's form, long and tall and terrible, her hands alive with pale white fire. Dwarves capered for their amusement, male and female, naked and misshapen, locked in carnal embrace, biting and tearing at each other as Euron and his mate laughed and laughed and laughed. To add more evidence for this, Melisandre in her first chapter has a vision very similar to this when she asked for R'hllor to show her champion. Show me your king, your instrument. Visions danced before her, gold and scarlet flickering, forming and melting and dissolving into another. Shape strange and terrifying and seductive, she saw the eyeless faces again, staring out at her from sockets, weeping blood. Then towers by the sea, crumbling as a dark tide came sweeping over them, rising from the depths, shadows in the shape of skulls, skulls that turned to mist, bodies locked together in lust, writhing and rolling and crawling. But it's important to note the final sentence of what this vision shows. Through curtains of fire, great winged beasts wheeled against the hard blue sky. This is George showing us Euron versus Daenerys. I have a previous theory called the false dragon, which I will post sometime. But in the theory, I talk about how the conflict between young Griff and Daenerys will go. But I'll dive deeper to the end of that theory here because I believe it's important. I believe that young Griff will be the cause of his own death. Euron, Cersei, and Jon Connington are not going to wait for Daenerys' arrival to continue their storylines. I do not know why anybody thinks this. It's just because people want a certain plotline for Daenerys to happen. I don't think it makes any sense. I think Euron is going to make it to King's Landing, and young Griff will try to be brave, but will ultimately freeze in the face of a real threat. On the Shide Maid in A Dance with Dragons, young Griff makes a big fuss about not being able to stay above deck. He gets so upset that he calls Tyrion a dwarf when he finds out that he's going to stay on ship instead of him, scornfully calling him a dwarf. But when push comes to shove, the Stonemen attack. When he's still above deck, he freezes. The broken bone was speckled with brown blood, but still he lurched forward, reaching for young Griff. His hand was gray and stiff, but blood oozed between his knuckles as he tried to close his fingers to grasp. The boy stood staring, as still as if he too were made of stone. His hand was on his sword hilt, but he seemed to have forgotten why. This is Tyrion's 5th chapter in Dance with Dragons. Unlike Daenerys or Jon, the people he's meant to be a foil for, he's really never been put in like a hard situation like that. And I do think somebody like Euron will absolutely terrify him. And I do think one of the reasons why young Griff is sort of I don't want to say like a bum, but he's low-key a bum. As the story goes on, it will become more and more magical. George has said this. Each volume gets more magical. I think that Euron is a much more magical person than young Griff, and young Griff is literally just a false Dimitri. He's not going to make it that long. He's so obviously doomed. I don't even know how people think he's going to be like that important. It's hilarious to me. Now, during this battle for King's Landing, Cersei will finally snap as all her children have likely been dead at this point. She wants to turn the city into ashes for all these ungrateful people who can't respect her or honor her. So she's like, fuck them. Also, she will recognize that the only way to escape is by causing chaos. She hates King's Landing and has massive parallels to Mad King Ares that everybody loves to ignore in favor for Mad Queen Daenerys. The paranoia, the constant references to wildfire, and more. They both wanted to build a White Castle. In 265 AC, offended by the stink of King's Landing, he spoke of building a white city entirely of marble on the south bank of Blackwater Rush. This is Ares' second chapter in The World of Ice and Fire. Here's a Cersei chapter. Even if Tyrion was still hiding in the castle, he won't be in the Tower of the Hand. We reduced it to a shell, which, by the way, they've reduced this tower to a shell using wildfire. Would that we could do the same to the rest of this foul castle, said Cersei. After the war, I mean to build a new palace beyond the river. She had dreamed of it the night before last, a magnificent white castle surrounded by woods and gardens, long leaves from the stink of King's Landing. The city is a cesspit for half a groat. I would move the court to Lannisport and rule the realm from Casterly Rock. Now let's look at every single quote that has to do with Cersei and wildfire. Even wildfire does not burn forever. Wildfire was treacherous stuff, and 10,000 jars were enough to turn all of King's Landing into cinders. I thought that I was the warrior and Cersei the maid, but all this time she was a stranger hiding her true face from my gaze. No need, Cersei felt too alive for sleep. The wildfire was cleansing her, burning away all her rage and fear, filling her with resolve. Even in the baleful glow, Cersei had been beautiful to look upon. She stood with one hand on her breast, her lips parted, her green eyes shining. She is crying, Jaime had realized. Whether it was from grief or ecstasy, he could not have said. The sight filled him with disquiet, reminding him of Aerys Targaryen and the way a burning would arouse him. The queen was drinking heavily, but the wine only seemed to make her more beautiful. Her cheeks were flushed and her eyes had a bright, feverish heat to them as she looked over down the hall. Eyes of wildfire, Sansa thought. Cersei was all wildfire, especially when thwarted. My beauty can be treacherous. My brother learned that lesson from Cersei Lannister. The kiss of wildfire turned proud ships into funeral pyres and men into living torches. Candlelight gleamed green as wildfire in Cersei's eyes. What is this obsession with making Daenerys be the wildfire person when it's clearly Cersei and also Jon Connington, which I'm about to get into? She will escape to Casterly Rock, though. I think she has some more stuff to do. Jon Connington would be obviously the more stuff to do is that she's probably going to get killed by Jaime, but to go on to Jon Connington. Jon Connington, though, will be triggered by the Bells fighting in the battle because his grayscale will be progressing. He's clearly, and that is a disease that makes you go crazy. He is somebody who fought in the Battle of the Bells, and that the bells ringing will trigger him. Here's a quote. Tywin Lannister himself could not have done more. He had insisted one night to Blackheart during his first year of exile. That is where you're wrong, Miles Twain had replied. Lord Tywin would not have bothered with the search. He would have burned that town to the ground and every living creature in it. Men and boys, babes at the breast, noble knights and holy septons, pigs and whores, rats and rebels. He would have burned them all. He had failed Prince Rhaegar once. He would not fail the sun.